just get chill here for the next few minutes, okay? Yeah, what do you think?
Can you hear someone yelling, "Go, go, Power Rangers" in the background?
No. Should I be able to hear that?
Did you hear it?
I mean,
Did you hear it?
Mm-mm. It is a little loud, but I can't hear it.
Well, I videotaped my kids. Like, I chose, like, 7 kids who I knew who could do a skill.
Yeah.
And I made them coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to come around and videotape the coaches coaching. And so I'm videotaping the group and I hear, "Go, go, Power Rangers!"
Nice. Nice.
This is why we don't have anything.
Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get this show on the road. Okay, big guy. You ready? Would you mind turning on that one? Thanks, Mom. Let's go ahead and fix that. We can't hear anything. So, yeah. I bet they can hear us now. Do you want to say hi? Yeah, do you want to say hi? Hi, folks. Say hi. Do you want to say hi? No. No, you don't want to say hi. Yeah, do you want to say hi? Yeah. Do you want to say hi, big guy? You tired? Yeah, I know it's getting close to your bedtime. Getting close to your bedtime, bud. Yeah, it is. You want to say hi before you go and do other things? No, not really. No. Life's tough, man. It's okay. You're fine, bruh. Yeah? Do you want to say hi? No, you're just sleepy. You're just very sleepy. Yeah? Yeah, you want to grab it? There's ribbons. You want to grab the ribbons? Okay, there we go. Okay, so hopefully mic should be working now. No issues there. Using a bit of new software, so as we get kind of rolling here, and I'm sure there will be a little bit of a learning curve in terms of me getting used to the new setup that I have and what I've not done from previous years to this year. So, how did the Inca get destroyed? Well, the Inca basically suffer a very similar fate to the Aztec. So basically what happens is that the Inca get invaded by conquistadors. Happens actually about, I want to say it's like 2 decades, sounds about right, after the Aztecs. And the Inca, actually their situation's even more complicated in some ways than the Aztecs. So the Inca, basically what happens is they get invaded. The conquistador's name is, he's from Spain, his name is Francisco Pizarro. He basically invades lands in the Incan Empire in South America. When he first shows up, though, kind of the backstory that we really didn't have time to talk about in class was that the entire Incan Empire is basically going through a gigantic civil war, which is kind of a problem. And then up until then, and actually after even Pizarro and other people have come and gone, the Incans continue to keep fighting amongst each other. And so that's kind of also a reason why they kind of fall. But basically what happens to them is that Pizarro shows up. He takes basically a whole bunch of people prisoner, including the Sapa Inca at the time, whose name is currently escaping me. I believe it starts with an A, but I'll need to go double check the spelling. And the Inca promise him a whole room full of gold and silver, or a couple of rooms. And he does get it, but he basically just executes the Incan leader, and that kind of throws everything into chaos from that point on. So, but the Incans actually did fight pretty well back against the Spanish for a while. But really, kind of what's then kind of tears them apart is a combination of civil war and then kind of waves of smallpox that come into the area afterwards. Right, big guy? Smallpox. I think you just got your vaccinations against that. So pretty much that's what happens. That's what happens to them. That's how they got wrecked. And in terms of that experience, that's very similar, right, to what's happened with other groups so far that we've discussed, right? So Aztecs, the Maya, really we don't know what happened to them, but the Aztec experience was very, very similar. Yeah. So are those ribbons good? Yes, they are. Those ribbons are just delicious. So good. Yeah, what do you think? So you guys will notice that my desktop is, I still currently have it set up, and that's basically because like I want to make sure I'm keeping an eye on chat and I can actually see it, and you know, be able to see you guys, and rather than not be able to see kind of what's going on. So you'll kind of see that my desktop is kind of taking over most of the screen, but that's okay. We'll get used to it. No bigs. Does that make sense, Kyle? How I explain that? Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. Can you believe it? There we go. We got the YouTube thing working now. Let's see if we can get the latest subscriber thing working. There we are. And let's see if we can do a read from file. Let's go ahead and fix that. Yeah, is that good? I don't know, man. I don't personally eat. Oh, I was not ready for that. Like Bam Bam from the Flintstones, dude. So yep, that's how the Inca got destroyed. It obviously not a very pleasurable experience, as you might imagine. Dying of smallpox is actually a pretty horrible way to die. I put it up there not with Black Death level, but certainly in terms of like the Inca have no idea what's happening to them. It's a pretty awful experience. And if you can imagine, like, living in a place where all of a sudden, like, all of your family members die, and the casualty rate is anywhere from 50 to 60%. I think it was 50 to maybe, like, 50% to 3 out of every 4 people are dying. And then roughly, you expand that to the entire Western Hemisphere, where it's somewhere around, scientists predicting where from like 5 out of 10 to 9 out of 10 Native Americans die from disease or war, and that's a pretty harsh reality there for a couple hundred years. Oh, did you drop it? Did you drop it? I got it. I got it. No worries, bruh. Yeah. You want it? It's got ribbons. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Do you want it? You're being very patient. I know, people should ask more questions. I know, I say the same thing too. Do you want this? Do you want this? Is it okay to ask questions from the study guide? Absolutely. That's totally fine. God, I'd rather you ask, like, you know, what is the meaning of life? Questions, which the answer is, of course, 42, then nothing at all. And that's why I'm on here, right? Yeah, is that good? This is our mine ball. We have different texture balls right now that we're playing with, and this is one of our favorites. Yeah, no, you're more than welcome to absolutely ask questions from the study guide. Oh, look at mommy. She is. Look. There she is. Say hi. Yeah. Nice. Good job. Yeah. Mommy's being silly. Are you Googling? Googling. Yeah, so just ask away. Yeah, I'm totally down for it. Oh, you giggling. You're being a goober. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Explain the social structure of feudalism? Sure.
I have the money in the wealth and the land, and you work for me.
Yeah, basically. So my wife said, I have all the money and the wealth and the land, and you work for me, which is basically true. It's pretty awful. No, don't grab Daddy's phone, you goober. But yeah, so how feudalism works is pretty simple. Okay, so we said that it was all about obligation, that it all had to do with your responsibilities towards other people, okay? And that basically the social structure, okay, is that we have kings at the very top of the pyramid, right? And then underneath them, we have nobles, okay? And then, or well, lords, same thing, and then knights, and then finally serfs. Okay, but that's a little bit of a simplistic pyramid that I gave you guys. The real one is a little bit more complicated, because then there's stuff in there like personal servants, and then there's also squires, and a couple other things that we really didn't discuss. But the basic of it is that each role, okay, and why the social structure matters, oh, big yawn, oh my, is that each basically person or role there is there to support the people underneath them. Okay, so basically what that means is that like if I'm a serf, I have certain responsibilities such as farming the land that the oh, are you upset? Passy, Bobo, boom, gotcha. I have certain responsibilities that I have to do. I think Book's done. I'm gonna pass him off here. That I have certain responsibilities that I have to do. I know. You're going to do a big stand. You ready? Okay, here we go. Certain responsibilities that I have to do. So basically that means that if I'm a serf, that I farm the land that basically the lords give to me, and kings in exchange gave those lands to lords as gifts. We didn't really get a chance to discuss that, but that's kind of the case. And then, of course, lords and peasants give that land to other people for them to go and farm and do stuff. And from then on out, it's pretty straightforward. So, yeah, knights, right, are the like hired muscle and all that jazz. So basically, they get paid to go beat people up, which is a pretty great deal. At least for knights. Not for the other people. So, hopefully that answers that. That was kind of long-winded. But basically, I mean, here, I'll go ahead and I'll do a Google drawing on it. Ooh, and then Haley, I'll get to your question. I promise. Promise. I want to play music, but I'm afraid that it's going to, overblow my voice. I don't know, you guys will have to tell me if you can't hear the music, or, like, if my, because I've got music set up, it's just... Not sure if I want to do it. So anyways, here's how it works, right? I'm going to go ahead and flip my screen over. Let's try this one. So you guys can see this a little bit better. Okay. So. Oh, Books. You okay, man? You fussy? Okay. So here's how it works, right? Okay, so I'm going to take, let's just do a bunch of scribbles. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. Look at that. Pro. Okay. So again, here's our pyramid. Okay, so we've got kings. Don't make fun of my writing ability with a mouse. Okay. We've got nobles. Okay. Or lords. Same thing. Okay. And then underneath them, I should have made another line, but I wasn't thinking. There we go. Okay. Then under them, we would have knights. Okay, but be aware, knights also were kind of a good position to have. Okay, like it's not that knights aren't nobles. It's just that certainly you could say that the step from a serf to a knight is a lot larger than a knight to a lord, if that kind of makes sense. And then, last but not least, the majority of the population would be serfs. Okay. Now, if I were to really accurately draw this pyramid, it's going to be completely different. Okay, because how it would actually be, and I guess this is an important point here, is that kings would occupy this much of our pyramid. Like a really, really tiny percentage. Okay, and that's simply because, like, you can't have a ton of kings, right? I mean, like, society just doesn't work that way. And then the nobles and lords would probably take up maybe this much, okay? Knights are not actually going to be a very large segment of the population. We can make knights a little bit bigger. Let's make theirs larger. Yeah, I'll just delete that and undo it. But there's the gist of that. Okay, let's redo the knights. The knights deserve more justice. Okay, and then anywhere from, I've seen estimates of anywhere from 50% to 75% of the population, and I would go probably more safely with 75% here, were serfs. Okay, so if we really like accurately drew this, it's completely different. Okay, but the reason why we spread them out here is just so you can see that the different levels are very, very clear, if that kind of makes sense. Okay, so there you go. I'm going to delete all this off. Okay. Can you go over the election of 1828 and what Jackson did with the tariff? Sure. More than happy to. I can work on my poor mouse drawing skills at the same time, which is always a benefit. Let's see here. So I do want to play music, but I want to make sure it's like quiet. So you guys are going to have to tell me if like it's overwhelming, and then I'm going to turn it down. Okay? So just like give me some feedback so I know what to do. All right, here we go. I'm gonna wait for this ad to play through, and then we'll figure that out. Okay, so 1828, right? So this is a DCUSH question. Okay, now so when 1828 happens, go ahead and change that. Okay, so when 1828 happens, basically, this is the moment where I don't want to say like it's certainly the elections are at a turning point, but 1828 is a pretty crucially important year in terms of things. So basically, here's what happens, right? So and kind of to explain this, we kind of have to go back almost to 1824. Okay, if you remember, in this election, Jackson basically gets shafted, and this is, if you remember, Jackson, he calls it the corrupt bargain. Okay, and remember, if you forgot there in that election, basically Jackson had the most electoral votes, but he loses the election because it gets thrown into the House of Representatives, and John Quincy Adams becomes president, right? So if you kind of go back to that, basically what this consists of is from this time period from 1824 to 1828, Jackson is basically, with the help of a certain Martin Van Buren, is basically, this is all, I don't want to call it like plotting time, but it's essentially like Jackson, he's still a senator in Congress, but he's like, I'm going to become president. It's going to happen. And when 1828 rolls around, Jackson basically devises a method that he can ensure, or at least what he thinks that will do, that it will ensure that he wins the presidency. Okay? With that being said, okay, what basically happens is this. Okay, so we go through a whole bunch of steps here. One is that in 1828, there was a tariff that was supposed to come under debate. Okay, so this tariff is being debated in Congress. Okay, now this is a basically the tariff in and of itself, if you remember why tariffs are really controversial, is that obviously the South hates them because it taxes imported goods. Okay, and the North likes them because it protects their baby industries. Okay, and so this tariff is extremely high. It is 50%. Okay, which may not seem like a big deal, but like when 50% of everything you buy is being taxed, like that adds up really, really quickly. Because basically you buy 2 products and then you have to pay for another one that you never even got in the first place. Okay, so this debate comes up, and what Jackson does is he basically sees this as an opportunity, this tariff debate. It was also called the Tariff of Abominations, to get elected and to make sure that that happens. Okay, and so basically what he does is Jackson, through Congress, gets this little provision added. Okay, and it's an added tax on, and it was basically material goods. Okay, or raw materials. Oh, poor Booker, he's trying to fall asleep. I'm probably not helping with that. Okay, so he basically tries to get this provision added on. Now, it does get added on, and you would think in this case, and what Jackson was planning, like the hope, okay, is that everybody would hate this tariff. Jackson would stand up in front of Congress, and he would basically look like the hero, okay? And the only problem here is that people went for it, and specifically the North did, even though that this is going to hurt them, okay? So this would hurt the North, this up here would hurt the South, okay? But the North actually goes for it, which Jackson was not expecting at all. And basically what that means then is that this tariff, like all of this, gets passed, okay? And again, like, Jackson did not want this to happen at all. Hey, Miss Stewart, I promise I will help you with the Hellenistic period. No worries. So basically, when it gets passed, Jackson never intended for that to happen. It was a total accident, okay? In some cases. I mean, he kind of shot himself in the foot, but there's where we are. Now, okay, I'm going to actually expand this drawing here a little bit so we can add on to it. Okay. The Indian Removal Act, too. Yes, more than happy to. Well, I mean, it's kind of a sad subject, but I'm more than happy to do it. Yeah. I need to decrease that coffee level. My coffee level is currently not at 89%. I'd say it's more close to like 62. We should fix that. Anyways, okay? So anyways, all this happens and it passes, okay? Now, as you can imagine, huge tariff, okay? Again, Jackson's not president yet, okay? So it passes, and who's the current president at the time? John Quincy Adams, okay? And this, I mean, John Quincy Adams signs it into law because, again, the North wanted it, so John Quincy Adams goes with it. However, it is super unpopular, okay? And so he basically takes the fall for this, okay? Which kind of was Jackson's aim anyways, okay? But Jackson was never expecting for it to pass, okay? So John Quincy Adams basically takes the fall for this, which sounds like not exactly what Jackson wanted, but then he kind of got what he wanted in a way. Yeah, anyways, okay. Okay, so he takes the fall. Now, basically what happens from this is that Jackson gets elected, okay? Now, again, we're now in 1828, okay? So here's basically what happens from this point. I'll try to sum up this next part kind of quickly because I know I've gone slowly here. Okay, when Jackson gets elected, this is basically the moment where he's like, okay, we've got this brand new tariff. I hate tariffs, and now I'm president. He's like, crap. Well, I have to enforce the laws. And then all of a sudden, a little state called South Carolina is like, you know what? We don't believe that we need to, do this whole, like, tariff thing. Yeah, let's just not do it. And they threaten, South Carolina, they threaten to nullify the law, okay? And that was a term that we described. It basically means that a state said that, no, states are sovereign, not the federal government, and South Carolina threatens to nullify it, okay? Now, eventually, they do nullify the law. They get to that point, and it even gets much, much worse, okay, to where and you can go into that mini lesson and kind of see the steps there, where they're like, oh, and yeah, there's also called this thing called secession, where we just break away from the Union. We're totally fine with doing that too. Yeah. And I would recommend that you go back and you look at the Virginia. I don't know if this writing out thing is helping, because I don't know if you guys can actually read it. Okay, but I would tell you to go back and look at the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. Okay. That was authored by Jefferson, okay, all the way back that was in 1802, okay? No, not 1802. Let me get the year right. No, because 1800, Jefferson's president. It would have been earlier. But anyways, it's authored by Jefferson when the Alien and Sedition Acts come out, okay? So I would tell you to go back and look at those two things, because basically the current vice president at the time, who was John Calhoun, uses this and basically says South Carolina's right, okay? And Calhoun is by this time, he's a vice president, but he's kind of fallen out of favor with Jackson, because Jackson, he's president, like, he understands where South Carolina is coming from, but he has to enforce the law. And so that's where, I'm going to go back and now delete this. That's where we get basically this moment where Jackson has to enforce the laws. I mean, he totally agrees with the South in terms of like hating tariffs. Whoa, I don't know what happened there with that is. That's okay. Okay, but that's where we said he did two things. He passes the force bill, okay, which said that basically the force bill said that the federal government can collect taxes anytime it wants to, and it will do so with military force, okay, which obviously sounds a lot like Great Britain and all the nastiness that happened there, which not exactly a great moment, okay, and this force bill will help give us the Whig Party later, okay, and if you remember, essentially they're the anti-Jackson Party, okay, and then the other things they do is they revise the tariff lower, okay, so he kind of does two things, okay, and the tariff goes back down to I think it was like 1816 levels or 1826 levels, so they revised the tariff downwards, okay. Okay, so I hope that helped. If I missed something, tell me, but I feel like I tried to help there. So that's what Jackson did with the tariff. I guess I went on to the whole like South Carolina thing, but that kind of does speak to what Jackson does with the tariff as well. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this off. That's all right. Just a whole bunch of leftover letters. Okay, so let's see. What was our next one? We said when we're done, can you help me with the Hellenistic period? Sure. Yeah, Hellenistic period is super fun. Okay, let's go get a world map here. Search the web. Let's do like a map. I love Google Drawings so much. Map of Google. Map of Southeast Asia. Oh no, Southwest Asia. Whoops. Feels bad, man. Yeah, but I want the Mediterranean too. That's okay. This will do. Okay. So I'm using the map here because Hellenism is directly tied to this map. Okay. This may take a while to come up just because I'm streaming and my MacBook is going to want to implode. Okay, so cool. Now this is a modern day map. Okay, but again, just be aware. I think it's in Russian. No, it's not Russian. It's some other language. All right, doesn't matter. Okay, we have this map here, and really Hellenism, okay, is talking about the time that it is right after Alexander the Great. Okay, okay, basically what had happened is Alexander was. I'm going to make sure I can set up my scribble here that you guys can actually see this. Okay, cool. All right, so anyways, Alexander's right over here, okay, and this is where he starts, and if you don't remember, he marches kind of this way across Turkey, he goes down here into Egypt, all over kind of Iran, what was Iraq and Iran, it goes all the way over here to Indian, or to where we would consider to be Indian territories today, or India, and then he kind of goes back to here, and then he dies, okay, so this is the route of Alexander. Now, what happens really is that it's the culture that follows his army as he's traveling this route, okay, and that culture, those cultures that merge with each other during that time, okay, were the following. Okay, so let's remember what these are because they're kind of important. It was Greek, Persian, Indian, and Egyptian. Okay, so these four cultures are going to come together, okay? And I just remember it by G-I-P-E. I didn't do it in exactly that order. GIPE, okay? So it's these that are going to blend. Now, Hellenism also just refers to this great, like, after Alexander happens, there's really, like, this very, I don't want to necessarily call it calm, but there's definitely a time where the world is much more in connection with each other, okay? And there's this huge explosion, really, of learning and culture that happens kind of around the Mediterranean world, and that is what we call Hellenism. Okay, so it's really just kind of think of it this way: if we took all these things and then we just kind of exploded that into basically a few areas, I would say it's this. I would say it's learning. Okay, because learning is important. Okay, learning and culture Okay, and then last but not least, besides learning and culture, trade. Okay, now in some cases, yes, you are trading, learning, and culture, but there you go. That's Hellenism. Done. I don't have to explain any more than that. Okay, so Indian Removal Act. Alrighty. Sure. Let's talk about the really most depressing thing in U.S. history. Thanks, Lillian. Super appreciate that. No, I'm just kidding. You're fine. Okay, let's actually go find a map of it here, because this is kind of an important thing. Okay, now this also is with Jackson. Okay, now the thing here is that let's see if we can find. I want to find an actual good one. This is a really in-depth map, but I guess we can use it. Why not? Okay, so the Indian Removal Act. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, now I don't know how well you guys are able to see this. Okay, but basically, and I'm gonna like way overbold these lines so you guys can see. Okay, is basically we have the Seminole here. Let's change this so you can really see it. Okay, we have the Seminole there getting moved. Okay, we have the Choctaw being moved. We have the Cherokee, and that's the Trail of Tears right there. Okay, and then there's a whole bunch of other groups in here that I would have loved to have talked about, but we just didn't have time. So the Creek and the Chickasaw. Okay, so it's mostly those five. Now, again, there's tons of other like subgroups in there and stuff like that. But basically what the Indian Removal Act does is it takes all of these groups and it moves them out to Indian territory. Okay. Now, the reason for this is kind of complicated in some cases. So I'm going to speak directly to Georgia because I'm very familiar with that situation. Okay. So let's see. I am going to pick on Georgia here just a little bit. Okay, so I'm looking specifically in Alabama and Georgia. Okay, so this kind of area. Let's draw a nice circle here. Okay, so in this circle area with the red circle, okay, basically what had happened here is a couple of things. There had been native peoples in this area, mostly the Creek. Okay, Creek Indians, and some of them had adopted more white ways, okay, or American ways, and some of them really are like half white, half Creek, and then you have some who are full Creek but then adopt European ways. It's a very, very confusing, complicated situation, and so what had basically happened there was a whole series of conflicts, and you could look at this up. It's called the Red Stick War. Okay, it's right before the Native American Removal Acts, and basically what had happened was a combination of things. White settlers wanted the land, and there had also been gold discovered, especially in the Cherokee area of that red circle, and so the reasons there are, I guess, kind of self-evident. Land and gold, which is kind of weird. We don't think about Georgia being and Alabama being a gold, like, territory, okay? But anyways, so then what happens, okay, is Jackson actually plays a pretty influential role in getting all of these people moved to this territory out here, okay? And so basically what this results in is all of these native peoples, many of them signed treaties that they did not know what was implicated in them, okay? Or they were forced to, basically at gunpoint, to sign these treaties to move. And they are either put onto basically territories or reservations. It's pretty awful. It's not a good episode in U.S. history. And in some cases, it's the U.S. military actually escorting them along the way, which is pretty awful. Yeah. So again, but the motivations for this are multifaceted. Basically, Jackson is responsible for this, but he claims that he's doing it to save Native Americans, okay, that they'll actually become, more enculturated, and they'll hopefully, not be destroyed and improve themselves, which obviously that's laden with a whole lot of racism and paternalism and a couple other things. And then other people it's purely selfish, like no, like we want the land, they're gone. And then we do have a couple of Native American groups that actually, not groups, but I'd say more individuals, they're by far the exception, who say that if we move away from white people, we will get away from the things that are destroying us culturally. Okay, so the motivations there are like really, really mixed. Again, not a happy good moment in U.S. history. Okay, so, excuse me, I need coffee. My coffee level, we need to post this down until I have time to go get more, because right now that's feeling real bad, man. Is he down? Let's just go ahead and put this at like 46%. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. So there you go. Okay. Is he down?
No, I just left him.
You just left him in there.
Don't say that out loud. I didn't actually leave him.
I know you didn't actually leave him there. Let's see. This is Mackenzie Martin. She can't comment. She's going to ask questions through me. All right. Questions by proxy. All right. It's a conception. Can you give a brief description of King Philip's War? Sure. People died. There you go. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. So basically, King Philip's War. We actually talked about this in my Block 1 class today, and they basically. Oh, you figured it out. There we go. Look at that. So basically, what they were most curious about is they couldn't remember the motivations for why the different sides got into it. Okay. Some of this, really most of it, and I'm actually going to go pull up the mini lesson here. Actually, let's do it on this. Yeah, let's go pull up the mini lesson. I feel a lot more comfortable doing that. Let's see. We'll need to go to Google Drive and find this. Okay. So basically, what we were looking at this time was looking at the colonies. Okay, and more people moving into an area. Okay. Specifically, we were looking at those northern colonies, and this is again really, really early on. We've been talking about the Puritans and everything at that point. Metacom. Maybe that'll pull it up. I don't know if that will. Metacom's. I think it was Nasty New England Colonies was what that was. Yeah, that's it. Let's take a look here. Sometimes I can't remember the alliteration that I put with some of these lessons. Dang, it is already 7:40. We're almost at an hour. Gee whiz, that went fast. Okay, so let's see here. Right, so it was native New England. Okay, remember, we'll come back to Mary Rowland here in a second. Okay, she's important, but we need to kind of give some background first. Right, so brief description. Right, so what we had discussed, I'm going to keep going down here. Okay, so we were talking about Amerindians people's response to colonies. Okay, so, right, tons more Europeans coming into an area. Okay, roughly about, and we said in 1675 there were 80,000 people. Okay, and mainly what this was a whole bunch of little settlements that are kind of out here. And I know this is kind of hard for you guys to see. Okay, whoops, feels bad. Okay, but there's lots of little towns that are out there that are basically either have very small populations, okay, or some that are a little bit larger have larger populations. Okay, and with immigration going crazy, another kind of new development that had happened here was praying towns, okay, which is a big thing coming up later. Okay, so the local Algonquin leader, okay, his name is Metacom, King Philip, same person. Okay, and what Metacom, King Philip, sees is his Native American Algonquin tribes and other Native Americans in the area. He sees them getting overwhelmed by white culture. Okay, roughly about, and they're becoming not only quite outnumbered, okay, but then you also have Native Americans who, for example, are getting kicked off their land, or they're being converted to praying towns, etc., right? So, Okay, what Metacom, or what really happens is that Metacom starts kind of causing problems in the area. To really summarize it briefly, and he's put on trial by New England. Okay, now whether or not you actually buy that, okay, when he's put on trial, okay, basically there's a praying town Indian who testifies against Metacom. He ends up dead. He's likely murdered by Metacom. We don't really know. Okay, but then once that happens, then a few New Englanders respond, murder a few Algonquins, and that's when Metacom's like, okay, here we go. And so basically the entire war, and this is what this map was lots of little raids that happen all over the place. Okay, now it doesn't look so bad. It's only 1 year of conflict, but 30% of settlers in the area die, which is the highest percentage casualty war by far in North America. Okay. Now Metacom eventually gets tracked down. He's killed. His head is put on a spike by the Puritans in Plymouth. Okay, so not a very nice ending. What's really nasty about this, though, is kind of what happens to Native Americans. So again, they had the three choices, right? They can flee, they can negotiate, or they can fight. Okay, and they chose to fight here. But what happens, for example, to like other Native American tribes in the area is that sometimes like the colonists just go and raid these other Indian tribes that aren't even, in some cases, Algonquin, and they just massacre them all. Because in many cases, they just don't have the cultural understanding that not all Native Americans in the area are trying to hurt them. And in some cases, actually kill some of their allies, which is just interesting to think about, but it kind of shows you like how complex things were at the time and how little understanding there is really on both of the sides. And in terms of the larger legacies that we talked about with this, hashtag panda, we said that basically the British government becomes much more interested in the survival of the Massachusetts Bay colonies. Okay, and before this, we'd been talking about the Puritans and other people who kind of gone out on their own, and now, really, Europeans are gonna keep pushing west, and nobody's gonna stop them. At least they'll try to. But there you go. Okay, so I'm gonna grab a quick thing of coffee. Okay, I'm gonna turn on some music. You guys need to let me know if this is like too loud or too quiet, because again, this is my first time using this software. It's brand new. I'm not familiar with it at all. Okay. So let me know like if it's blowing your eardrums out, and then we'll figure out how to fix it. Let's see, what do I want to start us? I have no idea. Let's just go right here. See what this is. Oh, I think I'll need to turn it up on Spotify. You'll have to tell me if that's too loud, okay? I'll be right back. I'm going to make myself some coffee. That peppermint coffee is really good. Especially when you don't put coffee in. Oh, man. All right. Oh man, look at you guys. Look at my DCUSH students asking questions. Look at you kiddos. Alright, I'm going to turn Spotify down just a little bit. Okay? Hershey's. Can you guys still hear me? Is music okay? I still want it to be there like in the background, but I want you to be able to hear me. Okay? Alright, I'm just going to leave it right there. So tell me if it's way too high, because I will fix it. Okay. Can you go over the causes of conflict, and I apologize again for the inception, for the French and Indian War? Yeah, sure. Not a problem. Okay. It's distracting, says Kenzie Martin. Okay, well, is it because the music is so good, or are you talking about my voice is distracting? Because that could also be the case. My wife did not appreciate that joke. That's fine.
Turn off the music.
I'll turn off the music, no worries. I totally understand it. Some people, like, I cannot study with music on. It's something I can't do. Okay, so here, I'm just going to kill Spotify. No worries, bruh. The music for sure. Alright. Okay, so I'm actually going to go pull this mini lesson up because it has been a while for me since I have had the opportunity to look at the French and Indian War. Okay. I like how my computer right now is like, oh my god, I'm struggling with everything. Okay. French Revolution, Napoleon. No, not exactly. There we go. Okay, so we said that there were a few main causes of the French and Indian War. Okay, and basically this was the overview that we looked at. Okay, if you don't remember the map, it basically looked like this. Okay, which doesn't look like a lot because it really wasn't a huge amount of conflicts. Okay, it is super important. Okay, so what had been going on here? Okay, was that basically with the colonies now set up, okay, you can kind of see that map over on the right-hand side, France and England basically said that they both owned the Ohio River Valley, which today, I don't know why, Ohio, sure, they wanted to compete over Ohio. There you go. Okay, not something we really talk about today, okay, but there you go. Now, basically what had happened is that France had started to build forts out in the Ohio River Valley to protect or to say that they owned that land, okay? And again, that's because France owned, like, all that area up in Canada, okay? It was called New France at that time. Also with going on at the same time is that the Iroquois, who we had talked about a long time ago, they are still around. They are being pushed to sell land to the British. Okay, and really, the European or Iroquois had been losing the ability to play both sides off of each other. Okay, so basically, what happens from that point on, okay, is that Britain decides, like, all right, we are going to demonstrate that we own the Ohio Valley, and so they send George Washington, okay, as a colonial leader. He's just a colonel at the time. Okay, he really doesn't know what he's doing from both a military standpoint and as a very young colonel. Okay, as Hamilton says, I can quote Hamilton here wonderfully. He led his men into a massacre. Right? Was that?
No, it's George Washington.
Yeah. No, that's
George Washington said it.
Yeah, I led my. Yeah. Well, they say it in the play.
But Hamilton is not the person.
I know he's not the, but as Hamilton says, I meant like the play. I meant the play, not. Oh, don't argue with me about Hamilton. Anyways, my wife and I both like Hamilton, so we debate these things. Don't get salty over there just because. Oh, okay, right. So basically, what happens, anyways, is that Washington sends a force out there. Okay, and goes with it. It gets tromped hardcore. The French basically send them back with their tails between their legs. And then the British try again under a British general. Okay, his name is Edward Braddock. Okay, they also get ambushed. Braddock gets killed. Washington gets like 2 to 3 horses. I think it was 2 horses shot out from underneath him, and they do not take the French fort that was out there. It's pronounced Fort Duquesne. Okay, I know it looks like Fort Duquesne. Okay, but it's Fort Duquesne. Okay, and so that's really the cause of the war. Is that there's competing land claims over the Ohio Valley. Let's see. So what was the effect of the Amerindian population Western Confederacy under the Shawnee on the War of 1812? Why did they side with the British if they're trying to reject European influence? Oh man, okay, that's a really good question. Okay, you know what? We're gonna pull up the War of 1812, just so I can like show you this on a map. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Shawnee Confederacy. I'm gonna try. Yeah, Tecumseh's Confederacy. I'm just gonna show you an image here. Oh man, I was hoping for an actual like good map. Let's try Tecumseh Confederacy. I don't think that's gonna actually get us like a good quality map though. No. Okay. Anyway, yeah, we can just pull this one up. It's fine. Okay. So of the Amerindian population was Confederacy under the Shawnee. I'm not exactly sure if I understand your question. What was the effect of? Okay, so if you're saying like why do they come together in a group, okay, that reasoning is very, very specific, okay, and that is because basically they from a fundamentally, I guess, Native American versus Western / American perspective, see a very clear cultural divide here. Okay, now Tecumseh and his brother, okay, they really want to go back to the times where Indian culture was not corrupted by the culture of Americans. So alcohol, gambling, other vices, okay? And so the reason why they side with the British, okay, is because, I know you can't exactly see this here on this map, okay, but the British are essentially north of this location, okay? They're in Canada. It's what we call British Canada as well, because after, actually, we can make a weird connection here to the French and Indian War and the American Revolution, is that the British owned Canada. Okay, and to this very day, the British Empire owns Canada. Okay, now below that point, okay, you kind of had a cluster of Native American tribes. Okay, Tecumseh being one of them. Okay, the Shawnee being one of them. There's a whole group of them that are in this Western Confederacy. And that's probably the best thing to call them. Okay, and then from then on, east of that, you have, or let me see, I don't know if east is, I think that'd be this way for you guys. Is that east of that, you have American settlers who are moving west. Okay, and so basically what happens is that Tecumseh and his brother at Prophetstown, it's very close to Purdue University, thank you, just kind of couldn't think, Lafayette, that it is, they basically say like, okay, like we have to reject, like we're going to go back to the good old days, we're going to reject all this influence, and they basically see a way to use the British to get what they want. Okay, so why do they side with the British? It's just because they're willing to supply the Western Confederacy with those weapons. And the reason why they want to do that is because they want to essentially stop Americans from spreading westward. Okay? So let's see. What were some of the events of the first half of the Revolutionary War? Yeah, I mean, I can show that. I'll sum up some of them here. Let's see here. Oh yeah, this isn't bad. bad example. Okay, so basically, I would focus on it if I were like looking at a very large overview. The one battle that I said you guys needed to know was well, let's get to that later. Let's for a second. Okay, so war starts out, right? Boston is really the center of things. Okay, and basically what happens is that the colonists surround Boston and they kick the British out. Now the British come back, and that's actually what this map attempts here to show. Okay, and I'm just going to pull up the... Oh, that's such a pixelated view. That's so disappointing. Let's see if we can find a better one. Yeah, there we go. It's a GIF? Okay, sure. Why not? Yeah, I can pull this up. This will work. Okay, so basically what happens, okay, is that you can see right here, 1776, they invade Long Island. Okay, the British come back and they invade New York. Now from that point on, it's pretty much a whole bunch of Washington retreating. Okay, and this happened. There's battles at Princeton, near Princeton University, Trenton, okay, Monmouth, Germantown, Brandywine, and essentially what happens at the end of that year or two is that Washington then settles down at Valley Forge, and the experience is pretty there. It's pretty awful. So from that point on, okay. Basically, what happens is that the British then also kind of decide from that point on that they can't really capture Washington. And Washington is like really, really good at moving around and basically he's really good at retreating. Okay, and so from then on, you can kind of see here 1777, Washington, the British win a battle. We're at Brandywine, Germantown, and then there's a whole series of conflicts that keep happening, and then they settle down for another winter. Now, at this point, and kind of towards the second half of the war, things shift down to the south, okay? There's a whole bunch of things that happen down there that I would love to, for example, like I would love to talk about like cowpens, and there's some very famous battles that happen down there with Nathaniel Greene and others. But those kind of tend to be the big things that people talk early on. Okay, and before like I leave this, the one battle that I said that you guys would definitely want to know was the battle that some people point to as being the turning point, okay, for things. Okay, so I'm just gonna go pull up the American Revolution here. Post-revolution, no, let's go before that. Political aftermath, Maniac America, American Revolution, lead up. Okay. So basically, the one that you guys need to know, no, that's not the right one. Oh, gee, dang it. And actually, I'm going to pull this up in a different lesson, just because there's kind of a general here that's kind of interesting to know. But I just don't get how that is a cause. Kind of. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Lillian's next question. Okay. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. Yeah, I'm going to skip way down here on this, and I'm going to talk about this battle right here. Okay, so this is Saratoga. And this is the one that's, like, most people point to that kind of happens to be the turning point, if you want to call it that. Okay, now I don't know if you necessarily buy that. Okay, but basically what happens is that the British Army tries to come down and cut the colonies in three. Okay, and there is a British general that gets surrounded with his army. They're traveling very, very slowly because of supply wagons that he wanted, etc., etc. Okay, and they are captured, and basically this is the moment where France had been illegally supplying the U.S. with guns and money and those kind of things, but this is where France comes into the war on the side of the colonies, okay, because the French at this time were looking basically for a way anytime they can to stick it to the British, and they're like, yep, this looks like a good opportunity, so they take advantage of it. So there you go. So that's basically, I would know Saratoga, knowing things like, you know, the invasion of New York is, I'm not going to say it's not necessarily not handy, Okay, but like Bunker Hill is a very famous battle that happens in the Boston area. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. So I would focus on Saratoga because that one, in terms of what most people point to, tends to be the more influential one. Got to put my coffee level at 100%. Oh, this coffee's good, so let's do 105%. Feels good, man. Okay, cool. So, so Mendelsohn kind of puts in with one of the causes of the War of 1812, but I just don't get how this is a cause. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So the War of 1812, the Western Confederacy. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll type this in for you. All right. So when the Western Confederacy starts getting organized, obviously this freaks Americans out a whole bunch, right? You have the British who are supplying essentially a confederacy on this side of you. Okay, which is Native Americans sounding like they want to go to war. And then out there in the Atlantic, you have them impressing your sailors, capturing them, and that is all going on. And so you're like, God, the British are just total pains in the butts right now. Like, what is up with them? And so obviously you can see why kind of like if they're supplying the Western Confederacy, that is a seriously huge problem for Americans who see that they are not able to expand westward because of the British being jerks. Can you explain the focus and impact of the Second Great Awakening? Sure. Focus and impact is basically this. Okay. First Great Awakening is the idea that you can have a personal, close relationship with God, that it's starting to break away from that formal church structure. Okay, so we talked about like new lights and old lights, okay? Like new lights were these people who didn't feel like they needed the structure of certain Puritan churches anymore, okay? And then the Second Great Awakening says basically that the actions that you do during your lifetime matter in terms of your salvation, okay? And so you see everything from women's rights come from this to eventually abolition. Temperance was a big one. Temperance comes really, really strongly through the Second Great Awakening. And again, this thing takes like 20 years to go on, so it's really influential. I mean, it's everything from that to even like we explored the one story of how teaching kids to have a conscience, that we start to see that idea start to kind of take form in that Second Great Awakening. But that's really the focus and impact of it, is that it's you're trying to, I don't want to say necessarily it's like social justice, because it's not saying like I want to go make the world a better place because it should be a better place. It's like I want to go make the world a better place because this is going to save me. Okay. Now again, it's not that direct. All right, but for our purposes here, that's how you should probably understand it. Some good questions. I haven't talked about these things in quite a while. I'm sure you guys haven't looked at them in quite a while. Got all the tabs open. We'll see what we're looking like here. It's been a while since I pulled this up. Whoa. All right. Turn off studio mode there. Whoa, that is Inception to the finest degree. Okay. Yep, so there you go, man. I'm glad to see like there's so many people asking questions. I'm really happy with how this went. Nobody asked for a mini lesson though, so I guess I never changed the upcoming mini lesson. But coffee level went up, so it's good night. I think I had a couple new subscribers too, so those of you guys who subscribe, thanks. Appreciate that. Feels. It really doesn't affect me. It's nice to know that there's people out there who are interested in studying and making your lives better and smarter, and that's what it's all about, ultimately. right? Because I mean, you can make some really interesting parallels. For example, like the presidency of Andrew Jackson to presidents that we've had in the past. There's been a lot of people out in media, historian circles, who compared Andrew Jackson to President Trump. So, like, using history to look at that is kind of an interesting thing to do. Now, whether or not you agree or disagree with that, I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, there's so much stuff you can totally dig. You're a stud. Well, thanks. A stud, like a wall stud? If you mean that, that's not a nice thing. I mean, like, a stud in a wall is just like, that's not very helpful. That just means I just sit back there and nobody sees me, but I'm, like, crucially important. Can you describe the colonial settlements in the Western Hemisphere? Like, how they became a thing? Colonial settlements. Yeah. It kind of depends on the area you looked at. I'm a baked potato. Oh, that's awesome. Love baked potatoes. So it depends on where you look. If you're talking about the northern colonies, it's because they basically are more private ventures. Okay, so like the Puritans, for example, coming over, they want the freedom to be able to discriminate for better or for worse. Okay, so theirs is a more private thing, but then other colonial settlements are very intentionally planned. Okay, so Georgia is a very planned colony from when it starts. Virginia is very, very planned in terms of the crown being involved, the British crown saying, like, we want this to happen in Virginia, and that's what you're going to do. And again, that happens through mercantilism. Okay, so how they became a thing, I would definitely want to make sure you understand mercantilism and how that works. And then from that point on, if you haven't done that, then I would also then take a look at some like different examples that we talked about. Okay, so Virginia is a good one. Massachusetts Bay Colonies is another good example. Those tend to be the big two that people talk about, at least when you go and take like a college course, because they're just so different, and in some cases so similar. Yes, a baked potato is a spud. It's true. Spuds are good, man. Starches. Feels good, dude. On your clothing, and they're tasty. Okay? So, it's 8:10. I don't know how much longer I want this to go. You guys are asking really, really good questions, but, and it's good that we have people hanging out, which is awesome. That's always a good feel. Go ahead and bump this way back up. Go ahead and cancel that. Refresh with no cache. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I don't know how much longer you guys want to go, but I'm more than welcome to like sit on here for a few more minutes if you guys have questions. I know that finals are still a little bit ways away, so we still got some time. But again, you've got me here, so if you've got a question, ask it. So once you hit a certain point, you know, I do have other things that I need to do. Can you explain our study guide a little bit more in depth? Like questions we should be looking at to study and just break it down a little? Yeah, sure. Basically, it's this. Like, if you can look at the study guide and you can look at the objectives from each lesson, and you can say, so for example, like let's go pick on one. We can do this, and it doesn't really even matter which study guide I look at. You would do this for all of them. No, I'm not gonna Google that. Because basically you're going to do the same thing. So no matter what part you're looking at. Okay, so this is how I would break it down. I would go and I would look at the objectives that I currently can do and the ones I can't do. Okay, so let's open this up here. Let's give it a little bit of time. Interesting. I could even probably pick on a world history study guide and do that, but I'm not going to. Why is this having so much trouble? Yeah, here. Let's. You know what? I'm gonna actually pull up next semester's study guide because the principle here is gonna hold true. Okay. Now this is next semester's midterm. Okay, which we haven't looked at anything in this yet, but this is actually a really good example. Okay, so basically here's what I would do. Right. So the questions to analyze are more like thinking questions. Okay, they're designed to frame your brain around a central issue or a problem that we looked at. Right. The objectives was something ultra specific that I wanted you to understand in that lesson. So basically think of it this way. At the very base level, I need to be able to understand the objective of a particular lesson. Okay? So for instance, this one right here. Explain the impact of industrialization on the US through management strategies and corporations. Okay? If I cannot like right now sit down and say the impact of industrialization on the U.S. through management strategies and corporations was, okay, and if I can't talk about things like Taylorism or monopolies and those examples, like those kind of things, these terms out here, okay, that you can see, okay, if those terms out here aren't popping to mind, that's a problem, and that's when you know that you need to go and do some work. Okay, so one thing that I always did with study guides, for example, is like I used to take these terms and I used to build these gigantic word webs off of them, right? So if I would just like start with the word industrialization, I would go and branch out to all these different examples, and then if, for example, I was missing some of them and I didn't know how to connect them, I would go and find a way to connect those ideas to the things I didn't know. Okay, and so basically then I would just go and do this for each lesson, right? So let's go find one way down. Explain the origins of baseball, basketball, and football through the context of the 1870s and 1920s sports craze. Okay. So in each one of those, can I explain how they started in the 1870s to 1920s sports craze? Okay. And so there were a bunch of broad ideas here that we wanted to look at. And if things like this, for example, in other lessons that we talked about don't come to mind, then you know you got an issue. Okay? Hey, Jamie. Hi, buddy. Thanks for saying hi. Do you want to say anything to everybody? Do you want to say I need a walk? Yeah? Is this my dog timer that I'm relying on? Yeah? Okay. How long are you going to stay up here? Just for a while? Yeah? Just going to hang out? Okay. So any last questions? Because it looks like somebody's wanting walked. And he is very persistent. Didn't you say your dog was a devil dog today? Yes, I did. Jamie's been a little bit more needy since we got Booker. Probably just jealousy, I'm thinking. Huh? Since before. I mean, he's a needy pup. Pups have needs. Pups have needs. They need pets and scritches and lots of love. I would think, God, though, that you would be all-knowing, and you would have known that I would have said that today. or even thought it. Alrighty. So any last questions before I sign off here? I want to make sure you guys, I want to make sure that I let you go and that you get tucked into bed. I don't want to keep you up past your bedtimes. He's very cute. Thank you so much for your time. Oh, you're welcome. No worries. I'm here, seriously, like, it's why I do what I do. Here for you guys. Okay, I was about to donate to you. You can't donate on YouTube, you goober. That's actually why I stream on YouTube and not on Twitch, is because I don't want to do the whole, like, you know, subscriber goal and donate to me and bits and money and all that jazz. Like, I just don't want to do it, and it's like, I'm just not interested in that whole thing. Like, why I'm here is strictly educational, not for any kind of, like, give me money so I can live as a teacher. Right? I mean, which anyways, you know you don't give me money, you give me coffee. But there we are. Okay, so until that time, guys, I'll what's your PayPal? I'll shoot you $1. Nah, bro, I'm good. Pretty sure PayPal would take like 70 cents off that anyways. But anyways, yeah, see you guys tomorrow, okay? So get some sleep, study, right? Go and look at study guides, analyze what you need to know. Until then, guys, I'll see you later, okay? Alrighty, peace.